All the one. Sir, recording. Shubhodaya. A warm good morning to one and all present over here. A very warm welcome to the resource persons and participants to the day 2 of 1 week online faculty development program on exemplary practices in teaching, learning, and evaluation of courses in computer science and information technology. As you are aware, this FDP is jointly organized by Vishweshwaraya Technological University's Center for Postgraduate Studies, Kalburgi, and Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad. Now, may I request all the participants to mute their audio and video. Wish you a very joyful learning over this session. Now, I am handing over the session to Dr. Shubhangi DC, Program Coordinator, Department of Computer Science Engineering, DTU CPGS, Kalburgi. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to all. Good morning to all. I am honored to introduce today's distinguished speaker. Good morning to all. I am honored to introduce today's distinguished speaker for exemplary session, a strong academician and a true researcher, Professor Uma Shankar Tiwari. Professor Uma Shankar Tiwari has completed the PhD from IIT BHU, Varanasi in 1991, and sir has experience of teaching and research of more than 32 years. Currently, sir is a professor in Information Technology at Indian Institute of Information Technology, Allahabad, and is the founder head of the Center for Cognitive Computing at IITA Allahabad. Sir is an experienced educator and researcher who has been instrumental in developing the research in the area of computational cognitive science in India. Sir has initiated and nurtured the international conference interaction and has been organizing the workshops, conferences, in the areas of artificial and natural intelligence for almost 3 decades. Currently, sir is the guest associate editor of the research topic Cognitive Computation, from Neural Circuits to Social Brain, the reputed journal of Frontier in Computational Neuroscience. The areas of his research interest include the artificial and natural intelligence, cognitive modeling, brain simulation, emotion and affect analysis, computer vision and image interpretation, natural language processing, etc. Sir has played a leading role in investigating the emotional models using the EEG signal. He has also published in the areas of Indian language processing and psycholinguistic analysis of native Indian language speaker. Sir has published more than 80 technical papers in journals and proceedings and authored and edited more than 10 books, including conference as well as the proceedings by the Springer, IGI Global, Oxford University Press. Sir is a fellow of IIT, senior member of IEEE and CSI. Thank you, sir, for being with us. It's my privilege to present Professor S.S. Benchnali as a presiding chair for today's session for the distinguished speaker for exemplary session, Professor Uma Shankar Tiwari. Professor S.S. Benchnali is a retired professor from the PG Department of Mathematics, Karnataka University, Dharwad. Sir has also worked as a chairman for PG Department of Computer Science from Karnataka University, Dharwad from January 2004 to February 2007. Sir has served the Department of Mathematics as a chairman for 2 years. Sir completed his MSc Mathematics from Karnataka University, Dharwad in 1976 with first class. He continued his higher studies in mathematics and joined for the research work in topology in 1976. Sir worked with Professor S.N. Malgan for his doctoral degree. Dr. S.S. Benchnali received the UGC's fellowship for 4 years to work for PhD degree in mathematics. Sir worked in the area of fuzzy topological spaces and received his PhD degree in the year 1984. Sir joined the teaching professor in the year 1979. Sir has more than 35 years of teaching experience. His research interests are in the field of fuzzy sets, fuzzy topology, fuzzy logic, general topology, dimension theory, and bitopology. Sir has successfully guided 14 students for their PhD degree and 25 students for their MPhil degree. Sir has published more than 70 research papers in national as well as the international journals and also completed a UGC research project. Sir has worked as a coordinator of UGC Special Assistant Program of the Department of Mathematics from December 2008. During his academic career, Sir has attended more than 50 national as well as the international conferences, seminars organized in various parts of the country. Sir has presented the research papers, delivered invited talks, and chaired the technical sessions in many of these conferences. Sir visited the United States of America and participated in the international conferences WCANA 2008 at the Florida, USA from July 2 to 9 in the year 2008 and delivered an invited talk. During this occasion, Sir visited the many universities in the USA like Purdue University, University of Chicago, University of South Florida, Florida Institute of Technology, etc. Sir has delivered more than 60 special lectures, invited talks, various institutions in the country. In addition to those delivered in conferences, Sir is a member of many professional bodies like Indian Mathematics Society, Ramanuja Mathematical Society, Kerala Mathematical Association, etc. Sir has the member of Academic Council, Karnataka University, Dharwad, and member of Academic Council and Governing Council of PC Jebin Science Autonomous College, Hubli. Sir is a reviewer of American Mathematical Society's mathematical reviewer and referee for many national and international mathematics journals. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Over to Shambulingappa, sir.
Thank you, madam. Now I request the presiding chair, Dr. S.S. Benchelli, Professor in Mathematics, to take over the session. Over to Benchelli, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now I request Professor Uma Shankar ji on behalf of the organizers to deliver his invited talk. Professor Uma Shankar Tiwari ji.
Yeah, just thank you very much.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. At the outset, let me thank all the organizers, including Vice Chancellor of VTU, our Director, Professor P. Nagbhushan, Dr. Sulangi Patil, and the Chair of this session, and many more. I am really honored and pleased to be given this opportunity to speak in such a august gathering. I think I am audible. Am I audible and is it fine?
Yes, sir, audible, sir.
Yeah, you are audible. You are audible, sir.
Okay. So today my talk is about teaching and learning, and especially for researchers and knowledge creators. You know, we at IIIT, while writing the vision document, had a great discussion with our director and other members, board members of the institute, as well as many other educationists of the country, that there should be some institute in higher technical education which talks about creating the creators of engineers. So it is a second order system where we do not teach to make engineers, but we may teach who will in turn make engineers. And this order, higher order, can go on higher and higher and higher. So basically, we are trying to teach faculty members and researchers who will create knowledge and do research. And in this area of information technology. Please underline this, that information technology is a field where almost every week things are changing. The technology is changing, the approaches are changing, new kind of machine learning systems are coming up, and a lot of research are being done in this area. This is number one. Number two, information technology is the area which is going on penetrating into many more domains. So the whole world gets unified in one framework through information technology. So these are the two bigger challenges. First of all, the level of integration is going higher and higher. Large number of people are integrating to one platform. Number two, the types of domains getting intersected together is large. Almost the whole world is getting intersected. So with these two things, and then trying to create an institute which has talking about the creating researchers and knowledge creators is a big challenge, especially in India. So the first thing which is there is that this model will be very different from the normal educational institute. And I hope that there are many such institutes in this country which has to more talk about why do we have such kind of not sufficient number of faculty members in the country? Why do we have not many PhD researchers in the country who can be there doing frontline research in the area of computer science and information technology? This problem has to be addressed by at least some of the institutes. And I hope that this faculty development program is basically for those faculty members who are trying to address this problem. So in this collaborative kind of learning and teaching, we will use the word teaching and learning together. Rather, you will see that my talk is divided into these 5 parts. First of all, why teaching and learning, the word used together. Second, what is the perspective for this kind of development, global as well as Indian perspective. Then the kind of collaborative model I am talking about for teaching, learning, evaluation, etc., etc. I will give some examples of what I have developed personally during my last 36 years in academics. Especially 3 examples I will give, and then I will summarize. So I will start with this word where teaching and learning has been used together. And this starts with it's a very important discussion, especially in psychology. Education was the area of psychology, especially in the previous 20th century. Now it has become a more pervasive kind of area. But initially, how the child development takes place, that was basically talked about by most of the psychologists. And Vygotsky was a Russian scientist who has given a word, who has written a book rather, and in that he has used a word which is called as obucheni. A lot of controversies, this Vygotsky theory, has been translated by the West people into different articles, and they have translated this word obucheni in 2 ways. Rather, in the same book, they have.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Sir, please share your screen once again, sir. Please share your screen once again, please. Your screen, sir. Screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. Is it visible?
Sir, it's visible, sir. It's visible.
So let me go ahead.
Okay, sir, please. Thank you.
So I was talking about the word obucheni written by Vygotsky, and Vygotsky is a kind of theoretician who has discussed a lot, especially initially in the early 20th century. He was a school of thought. He is a school of thought. One of the people have written him as Mozart of psychology. So you can think about Vygotsky's theory is very much developed. Rather, there is a whole school of people which call as a Vygotsky school. So in that word, the word translated obucheni as first learning, and most of the places it is used as learning, and at some places it is used as instruction, and which is basically for teaching the school people. So initial word for teaching was instruction, giving instruction. So you can think about the theory. The theory was to give instructions to the people, and it has to be given by a teacher, and the students have to receive it. So it was a one-way, directional kind of system where teaching was considered as a process where teacher will teach that, give instructions to the students, and the students will learn. However, this Vygotsky has written that book, Mind in Society. There are many stories about that he has not written that book totally itself. It is a collection of things, and maybe people have collected this in different ways. And therefore, there is a lot of controversy about this. Harvard University Press has republished this book in 1978, Mind in Society, where he talks about a development of higher psychological processes, where he talks about socio-cultural impact on education and psychology of people. So therefore, he has started a third area. He has added a third dimension in the development of mind, that is psychology area, which is now for education. So the first approach was simulation response approach, where there will be some simulation signals and students will respond to it. So students are learners and teachers are who are giving stimulation to the people, and it was more talked about as a behavior setting. Initially, you will find that the field of cognition, or rather psychology, was basically behaviorist. Today, what we call as the robotist people, they try to copy the human behavior, and they say that even the thinking process is the behavior of brain. So that is one kind of model. So they are behaviorist model, where people are behaviorist model. They try to talk about skills only. So they will say the programming is a skill, system development is a skill, algorithm development is a skill, and so skill development has to be done basically through practice. Of course, you have to understand many of the techniques, but skill development basically takes place through practice. That is, you make something as behavior. So somebody doing practice again and again and again will take it as a behavior, and that is the process of skill development which takes place for many of the people. So that was the first approach. The second approach, which again started in the 20th century, in the beginning itself, was the self-reflection approach, where the cognitive science came into place. So people said that brain is something which can think about itself. Normal system does not do that. If you want to know about the system, something has to be out of the system. So one can see about not himself or herself. One has to go out and see that person, see the system. So to know the system, you have to be out of the system. But brain is a very different kind of organ. You know what you don't know, and that is a very difficult thing for a computational system. The computer should know what it cannot do. This problem has been very difficult for the computational system. But brain is such a kind of thing, and this is because of the property which we call as a self-reflection. So it knows what it knows, and therefore it knows what it does not know. And because of this, the cognition method of development of child and development of society, and which is based on the psychological development of students, and that is the goal of the educational processes, was that enhance each individual mind capacity, create or enhance the capacity of self-reflection, to know about itself, what it does not know, so that a proper relevant knowledge one can read, study, and the teacher will help into this. The student becomes a self-learner, which is very different from the stimulation response approach, where the teacher becomes a helper rather than teacher becomes an instructor. So that is the second approach, and it talked about IQ development. A lot of talks about in that at that time was about IQ, how to enhance the IQ of people, what kind of general knowledge, what can be attitude, etc., etc., what can be rational approach. For all these, lot of discussions, theoretical discussions took place for IQ development. The third dimension which was added by Vygotsky was the socio-cultural dimension to this. I'm not saying that many other people have not developed this. Such kind of things are there in our own Indian panorama, about other Chinese panorama, many other cultures, old cultures, all of them has talked about. But what is mainly discussed in the literature, I am just talking about that, and therefore I'm taking those names. It does not mean that we don't have such kind of things. So the socio-cultural dimension for enhancing each individual's capacities, what it said is that the cognition is an area, or the mental development is an area where society and the socio-cultural setup plays a very important role. And therefore, many people have shown that experimentally. Wundt is a person which is known as a father of experimental psychology, who started talking about doing some experiments showing the effect that, see here, this has an impact on the brain. And people have started showing about that, the language we speak has the impact of society, of our culture, the way we behave, the way we learn, the learning rate, the way we understand, has a socio-cultural setup. And until unless things are done in that setup, the individual capacities cannot be increased. So that is the third dimension, which has been added by Vygotsky's school of thought. And after that, a lot of things have developed, and all the three now are the part of our educational system. So instead of going now in debate of each one of them, let us take the modern approach as where teaching and learning takes place together by everyone, either so-called faculty members or so-called students. Both of them are together. They are same entity, teacher-student. Like we talk about the same entity as teaching learning, the same process. Two names to the same entity. So in the same way, teacher and learners are the same entity. They change role for some time, remain something as a one and something as another. That can be done. So the modern approach in education is that the goal of our education system is skill development, IQ development, EQ development, which relates to social cognition. So emotional quotient development, intelligence quotient development, as well as skill development. All three together are considered to be the capacities of individual, and it takes place through social processes. So education is a social process. It is not simply the individual. So with this theoretical perspective at hand, now let us think about how the teaching learning is presently being taken as in the global perspective, and then I will talk about the local perspective. Now we will talk about IT and computer science. I will more take the term information technology. It does not mean I'm not including computer science into this. Let us take them together. So IT is something which is talked about information technology. You see, information is not a device. Like if you talk about electronics engineering, people will start talking about the electronic devices. But when you talk about information technology, so what is the matter we are handling? What is the thing which we are handling? And that is information. And information is not a device. Information can be handled through device, but information itself is not a device. Information is also not a signal. Information remains in signal. It travels onto signal. It gets exchanged from one brain to the other brain through signal. But information itself is not signal. Information is something which is the content into this. and signal has a form, it has an outer form, which changes forms from one type to the other type, etc., etc. So we talk about information. So information technology has to modify information, has to store information, has to transport information, has to do many things, the system itself has to understand, has to derive information or knowledge from the signal and apply it for solving new problems, etc., etc. So information technology is a new kind of field. And therefore, while information technology came, people started applying computational systems, but which can do understanding of the information, which can derive information out of the signal and other forms of information. This deriving information was prevalent among only the brain. And therefore, when AI has failed almost, so nowadays, if people talk about traditional AI, nobody will talk about traditional AI. Although for teaching the basic courses, I still think that the basic AI must be taught. But the basic AI has failed. The rule-based expert system has not given us solution, which is for day-to-day life problems. It only solves toy problems. And as soon as you make the scale larger, a greater scale, apply millions of data, all those algorithms fail. They are brittle. They are unstable. Any kind of exhaustive search used, even though you may have a lot of computational power, the problem is that it is a sequential work. Information you can only compute in many steps. You have to do sequentially, one after another. Otherwise, that real information will not come out. So therefore, you can have infinite amount of computational power. Even then, it cannot be done as an exhaustive search method or exhaustive computational methods. So therefore, traditional AI has failed. Now people are turning about that how it can be done in the computer for solving the day-to-day problems. Say, for example, developing this autonomous vehicles, where the car can go onto the road automatically and do all the functions of a driver. Now, this is a very difficult task, and our people are coming up with some sort of solution which are working. So therefore, as soon as you start solving the real life day-to-day problems, the traditional AI methods will not work. So what people have done is that they have taken advantage of the neuroscience, the information about the brain. And nowadays, the brain is modeled as an information processor. So I say in my class that which one is the most complex information processor available in the world? It is our brain, and nothing else. So what we can do is that if you start copying the processes which is happening in brain, applying the processes happening in brain, and having the structures like brain, or people are copying of brain architecture, or we call this as brain-like computation or cognitive computation. That is the future model. And you will find out nowadays all Google, Facebook, etc., are now taking cognitive scientists into their fold so that they can do a lot of new work, explore new things. And education is about, learning and teaching of human beings. So we have to see that how the enhancement of brain takes place. And therefore, people are now applying this, especially in IT, but now in all areas, this cognitive model. Cognitive area has been has been developed in most of the universities all over the world. So you can find out almost all engineering institutions in other countries will have a department called cognitive science department. Unfortunately, in India, it is not there. People are not working on human brain. The instrument for that is not much available. They are available only at few centers. The research literature is very less in India. So therefore, the perspective in India is more challenging. The setup in India is more challenging. And then there are many engineering colleges which are working at the first level itself. And that is itself is a challenge. And that is very important to work. I am not saying that that should not be done. But there should be some institutes which should work at the higher level. And this talk is basically for them. So they have to take this model of teaching and learning. They have to propagate this model of teaching and learning, and they have to develop this model of teaching and learning. So in the Indian perspective, the problem is more challenging. As I told you that it is a second order teaching learning, and I am not saying that this is true for all institutions. I am not saying there are some institutions which have to go for the first order teaching, and they're perfectly right. They have to choose their own model. Even for second order, there are some research oriented institutions. There are some faculty producing oriented institutions. There can be many more kind of objectives of the institutions. But here we are talking of second order teaching and learning, where the future researchers and knowledge creators are learning or taught. In such a kind of model, in such a kind of situation, what is this model which is generally used? And this is not the only model. There can be some other kind of collaborative models. Different levels of collaboration persist, and people have taken up different kind of collaborative models. But here I am talking about one collaborative model where every participant is an equal participant. What does it mean? It means there are no teachers, there are no exclusive learners, and there are no exclusive evaluators. It is not that only faculty will evaluate a student or others. It is everyone evaluates everyone else. Of course, for giving marks and etc., one can work out a particular system. But the whole goal is not to give marks. The whole goal is to develop each other, to evaluate the level of teaching and learning, and to know what I don't know, because this is an important part of the system. Any system which is developed for learning must evaluate itself, that how much it succeeded in learning, why it is not succeeding, and what is the problem. So that after evaluation, one can transform it, one can change that problem, one can create a solution, and that learning efficiency can be enhanced. So collaborative model means that every participant is an equal participant. There is no hierarchy between them. Of course, there can be certain amount of hierarchy put into the system, not academically, for administrative purposes. But I'm not talking at present of them. For academic processes, there should not be any hierarchy. And that is what we call as a collaborative learning model. And this model is based on the human brain model, where in human brain, what we find that there are many regions which are involved. And it is not that one region is responsible for one function. Nowadays, the new research in neuroscience has said that there are various regions in the brain which participate in different processes. And in the same processes, the same region can participate in two different processes. And sometimes they are very opposite to each other. So it is possible that same region acts as two things at different times. So both the things, it is a many-to-many relation. It is not one-to-many relation or many-to-one relation or one-to-one relation. It is many-to-many relation in the region. And there is no central control in brain. That is another very important part. You know, in our computational system, the memory, the RAM part, is controlled by one process, one operating system. And assigning each processor different parts of the memory and different values from the memory is one of the very exclusive tasks of that operating system. So the central controls lies with that operating system. But that is a problem. And therefore, you will find out that the artificial neural network has no central control. It is only connected to locally, and therefore local control propagates to the global control. So the whole nodes control each other. Although the present day neural network, artificial neural network, we talk about a layered architecture, where the layer 1 interacts with layer 2 only, and layer 2 will interact with layer 3 only. So therefore, there is no connection between layer 1 and layer 3, and there are no connections in between the layer members. So there will be no connected neurons in layer 1 and layer 1 itself. However, for competitive learning, you have to convey some message from one to the other members of the same layer. So this kind of layered network is not there in the brain. It forms a layer, creates a layer for a particular process. So you have different layers for vision. So you may have 6 or 7 layers which is taking part during our time of vision, seeing something. And they take a serial role. So one layer gives signal to the other layer and so on. But there are multiple paths. At least 2 paths are formed in the brain at the same time. And there is a feedback. And there are some modulatory neurons which modulates the process in different environment conditions, in different contexts. So therefore, this brain model will not have a central control. Each region or each member participant will be equal to each other, and it should not have layers and so on and so forth. That kind of teaching learning model and evaluation model we should come out with for real learning, for research, and coming up with new ideas and exploration of ideas. There are a lot of theories based on this, that what do we learn, especially what do we learn in the brain? Is it a global process or a local process? What is there in the memory? The learning, the product of learning is memory, but what is there in the memory? So say, for example, we see hundreds of faces. We recognize at least hundreds of faces, our human brain. Now, if you want a face recognition system, you have to give input from different angles. Now, the question is that which angle image will be stored in the memory so that it can be compared afterwards, or which angle or which perspective or which size of the face getting stored in our brain. Now, this is a very difficult task. People have found out that no single face is there in the brain. So what does it store? In the memory or in the neural network, associative memory. So the storage of memory in the brain is in a generalized form. It is a model rather than the individual images, a model of the image. And while comparing with the other image, which is a real image, so I know how my friend looks like. I see my friend after 10 years. I see his actual face. What I will do is, I will recreate a face from the model of that friend in my brain and compare that recreated face from the actual face and then recognize him. Sometimes this recreation takes a lot of time, and you have to memory that, okay, this friend was looking like this 10 years ago, now he has no hair, and so on and so forth. And based on that, you have to change your model or extrapolate your model in such a way that how does it look now, you have to expect that. Such kind of processes should be there in the, are there in the brain, and even in this learning process and memory process, we have to create such kind of thing. This is not simply local. Of course, to solve a problem, you have to have local, but the context can change. If the context changing things are there, so when you teach something, so you give an example, and this is where I, many times I feel so bad that we try to teach some people by analogy. So if you remember the process of how much time I have? Hello?
You have another 20 minutes, sir.
20 minutes. Okay. So I will go a bit faster. I thought it is less, but anyway, I will go faster. So one of the problems I was facing in teaching AI is that when I give an example of simulated annealing, all of you remember that there is an example given in one of the books, and every teacher gives the same this for simulated annealing, that there are holes on a big standard leather, and then you just vibrate it, and then there are balls on that. So if you vibrate it more, it can travel, the balls can travel a lot of distance and go into the deepest one. If it does not vibrate more, you give simple push. So if it is there trapped in the local minima, then it will not go out of it, because if you have the vibration is very less. So put more energy, it will go to travel bigger distances, and therefore the possibility of going to a deepest hole is there. If the vibration is less, then chances are there it will be trapped in the local minima. This kind of example we give, but this example is not so good, in the sense that as soon as people start talking about this in a real problem, then people will come up and say, sir, what is this energy here? What is the vibration here? In an information processing, face recognition, what is the energy? What is the vibration? What is the temperature? So we talk about simulated annealing, and the terms used are C and E and delta E and so on and so forth. But in the real life problem, this delta E and C corresponds to something else. And this analogy may not be put correctly for the given problem. So that's why when the local things are being taught, and you give examples for a local thing, the student or the learner has to do a kind of abstraction, has to go about universalizing it, a generalization process, and one has to memorize the generalized form rather than the local form. The local form has to be regenerated afterwards, and that is very, very important. So this way, there are lots kind of learning, etc., and based on that, there are models. So I will come to the end that what is my personal example of some kind of collaborative things which I have done in my career. So first thing which I have done is that when we started working on first introducing a course, first working myself for research on natural language processing, and I thought that we should work on Indian languages. So back in 1995, there was a workshop, 5-week workshop. Now those times are gone now. 5-week workshop at IIT Kanpur in Computer Science Department to teach the linguists and computer scientists about the natural language processing. And my natural language processing research started with that workshop. So we found that, if you want to work on Indian languages, then which stemmer should I use? So you go to Stanford Library and website, and you will find out there are a lot of tools about English. But how to work on Hindi? What is the Hindi stemmer? What is the POS, part of the speech tagger? Where do I give it? Where is the online dictionary for Hindi, English, etc., etc.? Where is the Hindi wordnet? All these problems are there. And you cannot start teaching without the availability of this, that you say that you just take the example of Hindi one, or the Marathi one, or Telugu, or Kannada, etc., etc. Just by giving one example is one thing, but where are the tools? And who will develop these tools? So a lot of work has been done. We have done also work in collaboration with many of the IITs, especially Dr. Pushpak Bhattacharya from IIT Bombay has done a lot of work on Hindi wordnet. And he has developed Hindi wordnet, Marathi wordnet. And I have, gone to that group and interacted with them and worked with them. Still, we are working on Hindi to English translation with IIT Patna, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi, etc., etc. So what I am saying is that just to teach NLP at the institute, and when I wrote a book on natural language processing and information retrieval, and I have given examples of Indian languages into that book published by Oxford University Press, where we have also put many of the tools which has been developed by IIIT Hyderabad, by many of the other institutes, and those tools are now available. I have found that many of the consortiums work internationally on, I can find out 14 Indian languages dictionary and other tools available at a site in Japan. There is NTCI working there in Japan. So there are many now groups which are working in the Indian languages for teaching that they should collaborate with those groups. They should give it there. The other problem which I found is that there are no Indian linguists. Rather, in Indian languages, there are no linguistic departments in the universities. There are very few universities which talk about linguistics, and especially computational linguistics are almost absent. Most of the linguistics are basically on English and not in Indian languages. To find out Indian linguists is very, very difficult. You do not find out in good English language grammar book which deals at the sentence level. It only deals with at that word level, but not at the sentence level. So all these things are there. So what we have to do is that not only to start natural language processing as a course, together with the course, we have to do workshops, we have to attend those workshops, we have to find out online groups, we have to work together, give projects, etc., collecting data on Indian languages, and so on and so forth. All these collaborations will be required. And therefore, I say that collaborative teaching learning does not take place only at the classroom level. You have to have at the department level, where the many departments have to collaborate with each other. It has to go at the different institute level and maybe at the international level. Different groups are working on this. Until and unless you have multiple levels of collaboration, this teaching learning for future researchers and for those things are not possible. Quickly, I will just talk about the two more experiences very quickly. One is that starting a course of specialization in MTech. We call this as General MTech IT, but specialization in human-computer interaction. Developing a course for that at IIIT Allahabad was a big problem. Initially we have had a workshop. Many faculty from many IITs came here to discuss about the course curriculum of human-computer interaction. And everybody said that impossible. You should not do that. What we are doing is how it will look like. No, we are just developing some terms, etc. So we took that challenge. Of course, there are problems of that students are not there. People are not job hungry. They will say that if you study human-computer interaction, where will I get job, etc. And together with that, we started workshop. Every year we have started workshop. We have started an international seminar series called International Human-Computer Interaction Conference, ISCI. And we are organizing it all over the world every year. You can see this team also includes Dr. Meghang Sur here. Professor Meghang Sur was the head of Department of Cognitive Science and Brain at MIT, USA. So he came here and also take a workshop here, etc. So the whole team is coordinating to this. Until and unless it is collaborated with these processes, it is not possible to start some kind of research work and some kind of teaching into this important field. And the last, I will talk about this cognitive computing area, which we have established a center just now, and it is a very important center. It works in many of the very important areas: eye tracking, mental state analysis, using EEG, NLP, dialogue systems, vision systems, machine learning systems, etc. And we have this iLink in our lab, Silk Lab we call this, and we have this kind of EEG analysis where talk about while during seeing some emotional video, which brain part gets activated and gets connected to the other parts of this. We are doing experiment onto this, collecting data onto this, and trying to do the emotional quotient analysis of each of the students and other subjects. So many types of such things are being worked, and that helps in developing this Center for Cognitive Computing. We are teaching courses based on that, on cognitive science, on cognitive systems. We are talking of systems which are working in the computational systems, where computation with words only. So we think that instead of using numbers, if you only use words, like a natural language processing, then the computational process can go on in a manner which will be human-like. And therefore, a lot of computing with words is a very new area which is working. We are talking of many kinds of new architectures of the human computation. And together with that, there are some brain simulation programs available. Many types of brain simulation programs are available. The company IBM has, spent billions of dollars for the development in the IBM a Watson system, and they have come up with a Watson system which is neural network in hardware. Neural network in hardware is the present research area where people are creating whatever kind of architecture, flexible architectures you can create, and it is a huge machine. Which there are millions of nodes at present, although there are 100 billion nodes in our brain, but at least we are talking of simulation of 100 of millions. So in this way, the present research is focused on cognitive computing areas, which is enhanced all the areas, and it has a lot of relationship with language, with dialogue, because these are the two ways in which the human brain collects information. One is the language, other is the vision. So if we can handle these two things, we can avail technology onto this thing, then our online educational systems will become far, far better than what is available today. So what at the end, I will say that for collaborative model of teaching, learning, and evaluation, we have to popularize research culture, collaborative work, and teamwork. Teamwork in the sense that, people work individually. Even faculty members work individually. They do not cooperate with others. They do not cooperate with mathematicians, linguists, etc., neuroscientists. We have to develop such kind of aptitude where the teamwork is possible. Doing the collaborations at the institutional level, all over the country and also internationally, is the key challenge, but that is the only possible way which you can go for collaborative kind of implementation of teaching, learning, evaluation. I think with that, I will finish this talk. If anyone has questions, I will be happy to answer. Hello.
So thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Umashankar Tiwari ji, for delving upon the nuances of teaching and learning for researchers and knowledge creators. Now I request Professor S.S. Benchalli to carry on the session. Sir, after your comments,
Yes, sir.
there will be question and answer session, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Umashankar ji, for your excellent lecture. Today we have heard an excellent lecture by Professor Umashankar ji. The presentation was very good and systematic. There were a lot of new ideas, and it was informative and thought-provoking. And this was very much useful for the participants for the betterment of their teaching, learning, evaluation process under this FDP. I congratulate all the participants for having heard such an excellent lecture. And in today's lecture, he started with the origin of teaching learning right from the Russian world, and he touched upon many things. Though the topic was very complicated, Professor Umashankar ji has made it very, very simple. He touched upon teaching, instructor, and then mind in society, robotics, skill development and behavior, brain system as a self-reflector, self-learner, student, cognition, socio-cultural setup, modern approach, teaching student are the same entity, the skill development, IT and computer science, information, traditional artificial intelligence, the failure, real life day-to-day problems, neuroscience, and then model of the brain-like computation, future technology, cognitive model, more challenging in the Indian perspective, collaborative model, human brain model, and what is learning, abstraction and generalization, and so on and so forth. And finally, he summarized the whole thing. Though the topic was very complicated and difficult, Professor has made it very simple and understandable by all the participants. Therefore, I congratulate all the participants for having heard such an excellent lecture.
Sir,
Further,
sorry to interrupt, sir.
Sir, please tell me.
Here.
Yes,
There
sir,
is
please
one
tell me.
question that has come up on the chat.
Yeah. No, I will come to that.
With
I
your
will come to
permission?
that.
Okay.
No, I will come to that later. I will come to that later.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So before coming to the question and answer session, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Uma Shankarji for his excellent lecture, useful for FDP. I am also grateful to the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity, and this was a new experience for me. I would like to thank Professor Basavaraj Anami and Professor Subhas Kulkarni, for both of them, for their kind invitation. I am also thankful to Professor Nagbhushan, Director IIIT Allahabad. I cannot forget his academic help to Carnatic University through his several visits to Carnatic University. Finally, I thank the VTU Gulbarga team and VTU Allahabad team for their excellent work. Thank you one and all. Now the question and answer session. Now the session is open for question and answers. And I request Professor Subhangini to take over the question and answer session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank
With
you.
your kind permission.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Sir, actually, this one is my area of research, sir. Some few work also. If with your permission, I wanted to ask my own question, sir. Okay, sir. To Tiwari, sir.
Yes,
sir,
sir.
please.
Yes.
Is it audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure, sir. Please go
Sir,
ahead.
I had worked on the handwriting analysis, sir.
Okay.
So you are talking about the brain simulation program. So is there any scope is there, sir, to write brain simulation program on recognition and interpretation of the text content, whichever it is there, by fusing all languages of India?
All languages of India.
Yeah, sir. Because I thought it is somewhat new because as per the survey, I've seen that when the work has not been done in this one. So
as far as I know, Indian languages has been divided into 4 groups.
yes, sir.
So Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, and this Kashmiri part and the Northeastern. They are different groups of languages. Many of them does not share the same script as such. So for script wise, now you have to deal different languages in different forms. Not only that, the phoneme set is different for many of the languages. So there cannot be one program for everything. At least there can be 4 or 5 such things depending on this. Handwriting recognition and interpretation is a very difficult process because of normal free form handwriting. You have to do a lot of pre-processing and you lose information into that. So my idea is that, of course, if you do restricted handwriting, it is possible to develop OCR. But the first level of problems comes at the OCR level.
Okay, sir.
There are some OCRs now available for Hindi. Many of them are chargeable. Marathi is there, Urdu is there, and there are few more. I don't know about other languages. So there are some OCR, but you have to do some manual corrections after OCRing, and then language understanding module can come up, and there are fair language understanding module in restricted model, which we call as a semi-structured model, where you allow only certain types of sentences. You do not allow all kinds of sentences to be there in the text, in the data. So in that case, you can handle that. So we can write programs for doing OCR, doing some manual corrections, and then understanding what has been written.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, in my previous question, I had spoken about fused data, which is in the form of text. Sir, if I fuse the data, I wanted to work on the multimedia data. In that one, image will come, some audio clips will come, some video clips will come. If I wanted to write the program, brain simulation program on such type of data, which is the fusion of text, audio, as well as the video. So what the suggestion you will give, sir, from your side?
You have to first separate those data,
Okay, sir.
the image data and this one. So there are some now softwares available where so given a poster, now it will scan it and will get you the text parts differently.
Hello, sir.
I think USD sir's link got cut.
Yes, sir. Sir, I'll do it. Sir. What? 1 minute.
Let's just connect.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm doing it. Sir. Yes, sir is available, sir. Sir is available. Hello, sir.
USD
Hello.
sir,
Sir,
Professor Umashankar Tiwari, please can you come online? Turn the video on.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was saying that first of all, you have to separate those different parts
Yes.
and then analyze each one individually, because the organization of data is different in different ones. You know, in computational problems, one of the problems is the representation. So
Yes.
image representation, text representation, language representation, dictionary representation, etc. vary so much that they cannot combine on their own. You have to have separate modules and then integrate information derived from each module together. So people are working on deep learning networks where one module will feed the image part, the other module will feed the text part. Rather, we are working on one of the problems which is called as the text generation from image. So given an image, can computer generate caption for it? And it is now widely used. So many people are using Bayesian network. Many people are using deep neural network, including this LSTM, long short-term memory. So bidirectional long short-term memory is very useful for handling such data.
Thank you, sir. Sir, there is one more question is there from my guide, sir, Dr. Prakash Hiremat, sir.
Yeah.
Given that human brains vary a lot from person to person, how do gold standards are arrived at various brain functionalities?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, and still neuroscience people are, struggling with that. One of the things which is there, this is a theory, Chomskyan theory, which we call it. It says that all processing has to be done by the brain, which will give you the correct meaning. Now there is a catch in this correct meaning. So only one meaning, which explains the external reality of the world, is considered as correct. So our brain can form a different network, but will come at the same understanding. If it does not, then that network will be lost after some time, because it will be considered as wrong. So it will only build up those networks which is correct, which is confirmatory to the real world explanation. And that way, how the neural network works, locally it may be sometimes wrong, but as you make it more and more global confirmation, it becomes set itself right afterwards. So in that way, different brains comes to a similar kind of structure based on always changing it, modifying it if it does not give you the correct explanation. And in terms of language, there is one explanation which is considered as correct. It is like evolution. It is like evolution. The fittest things will evolve ultimately. Locally and for short term, it can be wrong.
Thank you, sir. Over to Shambhu Lingappa, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Tiwari, for answering the very toughest questions effortlessly and flawlessly. And I also thank Professor Benchelli, sir, for moderating the session. With this, we have completed session 1 on day 2 of 5 days FTP program. I request all the participants to join the second session sharp at 12 noon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiwari
Thank
sir.
you, everyone. Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Nagaraj.
Professor Umashankar. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Namaste.
Hello.
ಮೇಡಮ್ ಈಗ ಲಾಗೌಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಸಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಲಾಗಿನ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ.
ಲಿಂಕ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ಮೇಲೆ
ಹೌದಾ? ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ.
I request everybody to turn off your mic, please. All the participants are requested to join the second session. The link will be shared shortly. Shambhuling sir.